Blue, do you want to try and get a few?
Sure.
All right, you maybe go around that side or back on this side, wherever you want. Here's a knife. All right, so we've got 3 good stalks here. We'll probably get 2 more. I'd say 4 to 6 stalks of rhubarb is going to be good for making the mousse. And these, I usually just compost these leaves. In this case, I'll throw them under these trees. They look huge now, but they'll sort of break down and they'll actually sort of add to the mulch over there. So I got 1, 2, 3, yep, 4. Let's get 1 or 2 more, Blue, depending how big they are. Does it look okay? All right. The thing's giving us an error message, but Clem says it's broadcasting, so we'll just keep on. Do I get 1 or 2 more stalks? While we're out here, I'll point out a couple other things. We have some herbs, about ready to harvest these. What we'll usually do with the herbs is let them grow to this point, and then we'll harvest them and we'll dry them in a dehydrator, and then we'll use those all year round, and they'll all come back. So we'll get a couple cycles out of the herbs. We might make a bunch of pesto. These are some different kinds of basils. I really think it's fun when you find different kinds of mints or different kind of basils to use the different varieties that you can find. So we'll do like cinnamon mint or chocolate mint. I think here we've got a purple basil. We have a couple varieties of Italian basil. We have some Thai basil. And I'll point out a couple other things. This is a crazy plant. This is something called lovage. And this is one of my favorite herbs in the world. I've never really seen it for sale anywhere except as plants, but you can plant it at home and it grows really well, as you can see. In the past, I've planted little seedlings of lovage. They've grown and then died. And then 2 years ago, it survived the winter. I'm not sure why. And then this past winter, it survived the winter as well. And now this plant's now 3 years old, and you can see it's like gigantic. It's never been this big before. It's always been like that size. So I don't know, it's just going crazy, and you can see it's creating flowers as well, which is really fun. This lovage is used in a lot of different dishes, some European dishes, like Eastern European dishes. I love it. It's one of my favorite herbs, as I said. It's got a really distinct taste, a little bit like celery, but a little different than celery. All right, awesome. We've got our rhubarb. That's a little tour of some of the herbs in the garden. Should we head inside and get started on it?
Yeah.
Hey, Blue, will you just toss those leaves underneath the trees?
Sure.
All right, let's go inside and we'll make some mousse. Clem, you want to help me with that?
Sure.
I'm looking for the chickens because I thought it'd be fun for people to see. The babies are growing bigger, but they're like under the trees over there. They're not very easy to see. They're over eating all the ticks, which is great. You want to go over and say hi to Aurora? All right. This, I don't know if the Wi-Fi is going to like lose it on us, but we'll try here. So, those are the mature chickens, and then these are the newer chicks. This one with fuzzy cheeks right here is Aurora, and I think she's everybody's favorite right now. But they're all really beautiful, and you can see they're almost full size. They're not laying eggs yet, but they will at some point. And they're big enough though that they can be out with the adult chickens without getting scalped and mutilated. They're a lot of fun, and they do a really awesome job eating all the ticks. Brooke just gave me a real look. Let's go inside. Well, the big chickens don't like little chickens when you combine them. So when you're introducing new chicks, you have to like be careful because the older chickens won't be very nice to them unless they have like a hen, a broody hen, to take care of them. Let's head inside. You gave me a big look. It's just what happens though. So there are a few stages in making this mousse. I would say this is a little more complicated recipe than we usually make on the show. And this recipe comes from a mousse that I made with Pawpaw. When we had Pawpaw in season, I was trying to think of a fun dessert type thing to make with Pawpaw, and we ended up making like a Pawpaw mousse. It was a fun little play because we found that when the Pawpaw were blended, they ended up being sort of like a natural custard in their texture and we were thinking maybe it'd be fun to have custard with mousse. So we ended up making like a mousse with the pawpaw, and it's really, really yummy. So we've done that I think 2 years now, and we put them out in the retail cases in pawpaw season, and we haven't never made that many of them, but they've always gone really, really fast. And I think the people who've gotten them have loved them, have been really lucky. So this is basically the same recipe that we used to make the pawpaw mousse, except we're using rhubarb this time. And I think it's fun when you're approaching like a totally new vegetable or fruit to go with some recipe that's familiar in some way. You know, we've done, when we started out doing fresh wheat on the show, we were doing like brownie recipes and things like that. And I think that it's a better way to start out getting introduced to fresh wheat than diving in the deep end trying to make whole wheat bread. And so likewise, I think this is a really nice way to get introduced to something like rhubarb or pawpaw that somebody may not be familiar with, is to make a really beautiful sort of dessert out of it that everyone's going to want to gobble up. So this is a multi-stage recipe, and we'll get started on it right now. Clemmy, I want your help. This Clementine was about to walk away from me. So there's 3 different components we're going to put together. Actually, if we want to point at the screen, we'll point this out. So I like to build this, it might seem like it's a little bit backwards, but this is how I like to build this, with a crunch at the bottom. That way you have to stick your spoon through everything to get down to the crunch, and so you get like the combination of the different layers. And then we're going to have a mousse in the middle, and then we're going to have rhubarb on the top. And so when we were doing the pawpaw, we had like the pawpaw custard, the mousse, and then the crunch. In this case, it's going to be the rhubarb, the mousse, and then the crunch. So that's the idea. Some mousses, a lot of mousses, most mousses have gelatin in them. We are obviously not using gelatin, but we're going to make a white chocolate mousse, which doesn't require that at all, and it's pretty straightforward. These are different components though, so we've got to make the rhubarb component, the mousse component, and the crunch. And I got started a little bit ahead because you can't mix these things while they're hot, and it takes a long time to wait for them to cool. So I made a little bit of crunch earlier on. We'll go through each of these pieces, but then we'll put them all together in real time. Normally you'd have to wait an hour until everything cooled down. So should we get started? Probably the first thing we should make is the crunch. You want to help me with that, Clem?
Yeah, sure.
Well, we need a bowl. So these are the ingredients for the crunch right here. So we're going to mix flour and sugar and butter and a pinch of salt. So you want to grab a bowl. Now, you can use white flour. I've got some, I'm running a little bit low here, but I have some white flour here. So we can use white flour, or we could use fresh wheat flour. Either one is fine. If you want this one, I made with the fresh wheat flour. You can taste it. Super crunchy, really yummy. Do you want, that's 100% fresh wheat. Do you want to do that, or do you want to do all white or combo? Half and half.
Maybe a combo.
So we want 1 cup total, so let's get a half a cup of each.
Or if it was all white.
What's that?
Or if it was all white.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be as flavorful. It might be a little extra crunchy, but this is pretty crunchy right now. So, Clem, you want to go ahead and measure those out? We'll get half a cup of whole wheat flour, fresh ground wheat flour. I remembered to grind the flour before the show started today, so we don't have to listen to that loud noise of the grinder. And then half a cup of the white flour. And when I was in the grocery store, I stopped at the grocery store earlier today because I needed white chocolate chips to do this. And they had flour again. They didn't have any organic flour, but it looks like some things might be easier to find than they were a little while ago. So now we need half of a stick of butter, Clem. You want to cut that in half? Do you have the knife from the rhubarb?
Yeah, I think I put it.
Left it outside?
I think I put it in the sink.
Oh, that's great. That's fine.
Yeah, right here.
So we're going to take that butter and we're going to crumble it in with this. And then we're going to need some sugar. And this recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of sugar. You can do all white sugar, or you can add a little brown sugar. I think we might add a little brown sugar just now.
Is brown sugar what makes it like kind of brownish?
Well, that one's just the flour. That one was all white sugar. Yeah, I don't have a lot of brown sugar, so when I made it before the show, I tried to save some brown sugar. I do think I like it when you can combine the sugars for this. I think it gives a nice like extra layer of flavor. So we want a quarter cup, and this is half a cup. Can you get me the quarter cup measure?
Sure.
Sorry, I wasn't looking very carefully. And then, I don't know, Clem, you probably, have I made a little crunch with you before? Let's see, I'm just transferring the sugar to the smaller cup.
Yeah, maybe a
All right.
little bit.
So, this is like a crumble or crunch. You know, a fun little tip if you play around with this and you like how it's coming out, and you've gotten a Clover breakfast box, you could add some oats in here. I wouldn't add the steel cut oats, those will be a little bit tough, but the rolled oats that we have in our overnight oats would be awesome in this. It's not that different than a granola, except in a granola we usually we wouldn't have butter in it like this. But you can add some oats in, it can be really yummy. Here, Clem, you can do this. So what you're gonna do is like reach in there and you're gonna smush the butter to like break those pieces apart. Good job. You're just gonna keep grinding the butter into the flour. You can keep doing that until it becomes like one whole mass.
The crumble's really good.
What's that?
The crumble's really good.
You like the crumble? Yeah, it is really good, and I love having that at the bottom of the mousse to like reach through and grab. So while Clem is crumbling that, we'll come back in a second and check how that looks because I think it's going to be good for everybody to see what that looks like. In the meantime, we can go ahead and cut up the rhubarb. Blue, do you want to do some of this?
Sure.
So, you can use this knife. I think you can use this one. So in this case, this knife might be good, Blue, because you have a little more leverage. The rhubarb is funny. It can be a little bit tough. There are these strings in the rhubarb. Now I'll show you. We talked a little bit about this on the rhubarb episode. So this outer layer is sort of stringy. And my grandma used to peel her rhubarb. I've decided I don't think we need to peel it. One, it takes a lot of time to peel it, but more than that, there's probably a lot of nutrients in the skin. But if you cut it into pretty short pieces, so like a small piece, the worst you're gonna have then is a piece of stringiness that's that long, which isn't that offensive. So we're gonna get away from, instead of peeling it, we're just gonna cut it into smallish pieces. You wanna try? So
yeah.
What you're gonna do is make a solid hand and just get a nice rock. You shouldn't have to push that hard as long as you keep that motion going, okay? So you shouldn't have to push very hard, but you gotta keep your motion. If you stop in the middle, it's probably gonna feel like hard to cut. Get that tip on there, there you go. Yep, you sort of feel like if you slow down and hesitate, it gets hard. Nice job. And then with things like this would apply for celery, other kinds of long, stocky things. You want to have like a bunch that's appropriate to your hand size. So for me, I'd probably do 3 or 4 of these stalks. So if I was cutting 2 long ones, I'd cut it in half, I'd bring them together, and then I'd have 4 stalks to run at. It looks like Blue 2 is probably, 2 or 3 is a good number. Should we check back on this? All right, so this is the crumble Clem's been working on, and it is looking awesome. So you want to get it to a place, it sort of looks a little bit like cornmeal, but if you grab it, it'll come together into clumps. And that's just what we're aiming for. So we want it to like come together into clumps. I think for rhubarb, this is going to be really good as a neutral flavor, so we're going to leave it the way it is. But if you were doing some other kind of thing, you might want to add a little cinnamon or nutmeg at this point or something like that, and you could flavor this. But I think for rhubarb, I like vanilla with rhubarb, but I'm not sure about the spices as much. So this is looking really, really great. If you only use white flour, it would be more white in color, and that would be fine. Now, we have our oven at 325 degrees, and we're going to get a baking sheet. This is just a pizza tray. You can use any kind of baking sheet. It doesn't really matter what you use here. And as I'm putting this, I'm going to just squeeze the fistfuls. So I've got this in my hands. And then I'm going to just gently break it down a little bit. So I'm not like packing it, but I'm not making it all into dust either. So this is good. This will be enough. These pieces, as they bake, the sugar and the butter, it'll all sort of come together, but in a flaky, crunchy way. So that's the crumble. We're going to put it in the oven. 325 degrees. This is a convection oven. If you don't have convection, it's fine. It'll just take a little bit longer to cook. When I baked that earlier, it was perfect, probably about 12, 15 minutes in. It starts smelling really good, and once you start smelling that delicious smell, check in on it. It won't be hard and crunchy like that when you pull it out of the oven because it'll still be hot. But you pick it out when it's like golden brown. You don't want it to turn like burnt or anything. So we're just finishing up that rhubarb, and alright, so this is what the rhubarb looks like. I'll cut. You can see it's pretty green inside. As the season goes on, the rhubarb will become more and more red on the inside, but alright. Okay, come over here.
I'm gonna make rhubarb compote.
Yes. Yep. So we're washing it. Blue, you want to shake it around that water, make sure it gets to the steam. Nice job, Blue. Alright, so if you feel like all the dirt is off of it, just make sure it's all nice and clean. Okay, you can lift it up out of the basket. Now, this is my method for the rhubarb compote. This is what you can use to put on breakfast, cereal, pancakes, waffles. You can make mixed drinks with this. We're just gonna rinse the rhubarb like that, and we're gonna take some sugar, and in this case, this is probably about 1/4 cup of sugar we're gonna put in here. And what I usually do is I put in the sugar just enough so it can coat the rhubarb. And we let the water stay on the rhubarb, the water that came out of the mixer. So a little more. And there we go. And so it's just enough sugar to coat the rhubarb. Then I'm gonna go ahead and put the rhubarb into a pot, and I'm going to turn some heat on underneath that. And we have that on a relatively high heat. We'll wait until the rhubarb starts sweating. You'll see it'll get a little bit wet in there, and at that point we'll turn the heat down, let it cook for about 3, 4, or 5 minutes. And Blue's got the questions. Yes?
Right. If you put oats, how much?
So in this case, the recipe we're doing here is 1 cup of flour. I wouldn't do more than 1/4 cup of oats, maybe 1/3 maximum, because you want to make sure you have plenty of butter and flour to make the whole thing work. Awesome, Blue. I'm happy to have you back on that. This is fun. I was feeling a little reminiscent about when we used to do these every single day, and at the time it felt like a lot, and there's just no way I could pull it off now. I think those of you who've been enjoying this show have noticed that there haven't been any live shows for a couple weeks. That just reflects me being really busy working on getting the box program out of the gate for Clover. Our deliveries for that have been Tuesday and Saturday. So a lot of Mondays when we used to do these shows, I've been scrambling to help in the kitchen. And then Thursdays I've also been helping. But things are a little more settled now. We're getting better at what we're doing. And now we're getting ready to start the restaurant. So it's all taking a lot of time. It means I can't do these every single day. But I miss it. It's been really fun. And it's fun to think back to when we were doing these all the time. All right, so Clem, you want to grab a spoon or something there?
Sure.
Let's no, like a wooden spoon to stir the rhubarb. All right, and so the next thing we're going to do now. So that was the first part, making the rhubarb compote. The second part. So we tackled this, and this is cooking right now. We tackled this. This is the crumb. So we've got the crumb and the compote. And now we have to do the mousse that goes in the middle. So to work on the mousse, we're going to melt some white chocolate chips. The way we're going to do this is we're going to set up a double boiler. Now, I don't have a double boiler, which might be sort of funny for people. But we're just going to improvise. So a double boiler is just a setup where you have water that boils, and then that forms steam. And then you have the steam condensing on the bottom side of a bowl, and the temperature and the steam is bringing the temperature of the bowl up. So that the temperature in this setup will never get above a certain point, about 210 degrees or so, which is nice, so we won't scorch anything. And so, so we're going to set this up on the stovetop, and basically we're going to bring that at a very high temperature, but the high temperature is just going to heat the water underneath. The water's going to turn to steam, the steam's going to come up and hit this. This is going to come up to the temperature of about 200, 210 degrees, which is cool enough that it won't scorch the chocolate, and it will melt really nicely. So that's how we're going to heat up the white chocolate. And we have, how much chocolate did we put in there? Half of a cup. We have half a cup of white chocolate in there. So you can see now, there's some water. You see there's some liquid there? That's like weeping out of the rhubarb. That's nice to see. And I'm going to just check on it and stir it a little bit. We keep the heat pretty high. You can see that's like a medium-high flame for my stove. We're going to keep the heat on this until the rhubarb starts breaking down a little bit. And then we'll turn it down and let it go further. Blue's got a question.
Another question.
Yeah, shoot.
Okay, so what's the temperature and cooking time for the crunch?
For the crunch. 325 degrees is the temperature. Cooking time will vary a little bit based on your oven. Mine's a convection oven. This will probably take 12 to 16 minutes in my oven. And I'm going to be smelling it, so this is nice to cook without a mask. We've been finding, like in the commissary, we have to prepare all the food with masks all the time, right? And so we're burning things more than we used to. I mean, we're obviously when we burn things, we have to make it all over again. You're not getting the burned things, but normally in the kitchen we rely on our noses a lot to figure out if things are done or not done. And now with the masks on, everybody's like, we're a little bit worse than what we used to be good at. So we're having to be very careful. We've had a couple moments where we're running around like, oh no, the beans are going to burn, and they're already past. Normally you would sort of smell when they're about done and catch them. But there are a lot of things in the kitchen that you can't necessarily time precisely because there are factors that are going to affect it one way or another. Sometimes it's only plus or minus a couple minutes, but it's often hard to give a precise time. Or if you do give a precise time, you might be setting somebody up to fail. And so often in the show, we've been focusing more on like what to pay attention and what to look for. Let's take a quick look at this crumb, and I don't smell it yet, so that's a sign to me. And if I touch it, it sort of feels raw. It's like it doesn't really feel like crunchy at all to me. So I know it's not cooked. It's all the way yet, and we'll check in it on a couple more times to make sure it's all the way done. For most people, it'll be between, I'd say, 14 and 20 minutes to cook the crumb. Okay, so we're getting close. I think these. Clem, could you grab the spatula? And we got to get the whipped cream going. All right, do you want to go just touch it against those white chocolate chips? I think they might be. All right, so let's let the camera see there. All right, so what you see here right now is they're still holding their form. So they're starting to melt, but they're not all the way there. We want them to just like be totally poopy ball. So we'll let those go a little further. And you want to get some whipped cream going?
Yeah. Oh.
This is yet another recipe I usually make by feel. So before we did the show, I thought we should make a batch of this to test out. And Clementine thought I did a terrible job whipping the cream, which is true. Because I was doing something, got distracted, and had a phone call, and I over-whipped the cream. So I told her she could make the cream for now. You were hoping to make Oatly? Oh, I don't think Oatly will whip up very well. I'm sorry, but you know, we could do a coconut cream. That would be really yummy, but I don't think the Oatly will hold the shape like that. So this is to be said, this is like not a great dish for those of us who have some level of lactose intolerance. That's a full cup of cream we're putting in there. But I have to say it's really, really yummy, and I enjoy this so much. This will probably, I don't eat dairy that often, and this is probably one of those things I'll eat it anyway, even though I don't think it's the best thing for my belly.
Is there some sugar?
And for Blue, we'll get him a lactate probably. No sugar. So you may wonder why there's no sugar in there. Blue may really wonder why there's no sugar in there. We're going to be folding it with the white chocolate. White chocolate is super, super sweet. So if we add sugar to the cream, it's going to overshoot on the sugar dimension. mousse up here, maybe more crowded. Let's leave it down here. How's that looking, Blue? So Blue's thinking about the rhubarb, which is a good idea. You want to come see that? And you can see the bubbles happening there. It's starting to dry a little bit on the side. There's still a lot of moisture in the rhubarb itself. So if you give it a good stir, where we're going to go all around those sides, then we'll just change up the part of the fruit that's exposed to the highest heat. It'll start breaking down, providing more liquid, and we'll keep it from scorching. So here we go. So you can see that it's starting to form a little bit of a sort of pasty background. That's what we're looking for. This is the point at which I'll turn down the heat, and we'll let that go probably just a little bit higher than low. And this is going to cook away at that temperature for maybe 5 or 6 minutes. Altogether, this thing's probably 8 to 12 minutes or so. Oh, now you can see our white chocolate is like, it's all blending together really nicely, meaning it's all melted, and that's great. So now what we're going to do with the white chocolate is we need to cool that. This might seem really funny, so we just heated it up.
It looks like yogurt.
It does. It's a really funny thing, isn't it? And it's like, why did we just heat that up when I'm going to go cool it? But we want to fold this into that whipped cream, and I don't want to fold it in when it's quite this hot. So I'm just going to spread it out a little bit in this bowl. That will give more surface area between the metal of the bowl and the white chocolate. And then I'm going to put this in my freezer, and the metal's going to get cold. It's going to transmit some of that coldness to the white chocolate, and it's going to cool us down. So we basically want to get that to room temperature or thereabouts, and then we'll fold it in with the whipped cream. If we fold it in right now, it's so hot, it will break the cream. How's it looking?
I think pretty good.
Okay. What's that?
I don't think.
Oh, I think you're a little under though. We need to go a little more stiff than that. Yeah. Getting there.
I could just do it with my hand.
Yeah? Okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
Clem wants to get just the perfect texture out of it, I think. Now,
Is that good?
yeah, that's good. So while Clem's getting the perfect texture for the whipped cream, I just want to show you quickly over here. So I'm looking at this now, and I stir this. It's looking a little bit dry to me, not a lot, but a little bit. And this is just a sense of it. It's been very dry lately, so sometimes the rhubarb will be more wet and we won't have to do this. But I'm going to add probably 1 tablespoon of water in there, and that's just a judgment. You know, it's drying out a little more than I'd like it to. Now it's looking about right, so I'm happy with that. And it may even be related to our drought, our semi-drought that we have here in New England right now. All right, that's cooking away. It's almost done. How's that feel? Still a little more time?
Yeah.
It might need a little more time. That's okay.
Yeah. It's not hot, but it's not cold.
Well, we want it room temperature. Is that room temperature?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like not hot.
All right.
It's not cold.
Let's bring it in. So we have this cooled down now, and we don't want it to get too cold or it'll solidify again. So this is our white chocolate. We're gonna go ahead and use the spatula to put all of that into our cream. And we don't have a lot of it here, so we really want to try to do a very good job using the spatula to get as much as we can out of this little bowl. And now, in here, it's probably a little hard to see because it's white on white, but we're going to fold this in. So folding, you go under and over like this, and it's a method of mixing things that's very, very gentle. And in this case, it's going to help us preserve the bubbles in that whipped cream that are making the whipped cream so delicious in your mouth and fluffy. So we're just going to fold that in a couple more times. There we go. Okay, so that's looking really good. Awesome. And the white chocolate, so this is a very simple mousse. That is the mousse. The white chocolate is going to keep some stiffness for the mousse as it cools and as it sits for a little while. So if we didn't put the white chocolate, the cream might break down on its own. But with the white chocolate, we'll actually have like a pretty stable mousse. And how's that looking? I'll let that go a little longer. Starting to smell good, so we'll give it maybe 2 more minutes. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, so at this point, I'm just going to review where we are in the recipe. So we've made our rhubarb compote, it's finishing up there. We've made our mousse, and we've made the crumble. The one thing on the mousse is I'd like to add a little bit of rhubarb flavor into the mousse. So you're going to have this rhubarb compote, you're going to have the rhubarb mousse, and then you're going to have the crumble. So that's going to be our next thing to do. And we're going to use some rhubarb compote we made earlier today. Excuse me too. This is a problem I have all the time in the kitchen. Is the dogs love to be with us when we're cooking, but then they lay in front of things I need to get into, and they really don't want to get up. Come on, sweetie. Move your head. There you go. All right. So here we have some rhubarb that I made earlier, so I could cool it a little bit so it wouldn't be too hot. And what we're going to do with this, we're going to add some of this to the blender. We don't need to blend a lot of it. In this case, you want to hand me that one measure cup for the cream? Thanks, buddy. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to take about half a cup of this compote. There it is. So right now, this has like, this is what that's going to become. I just washed my hands, so this is okay. But you can see there's like pieces of rhubarb, but they're really tender. And then there's like a background to it, and there's like these little strands, but they're all really yummy. It's got like a really yummy sourness, a little bit of sweetness from the sugar we added to it. All right, so I've now added that to the blender. And I'm going to use the blender to make this more smooth. And that's looking really good. Now we're going to do something to go further on that. I warned y'all, this is like more fussy than what we usually do on our show, but we're going to now take this rhubarb, which is more like a paste now, and I'm going to press it through. I'm going to press it through the strainer, and see if I can't get some of that through. And this one might be that this is a little bit too fine a strainer for that rhubarb to get through. How are we doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Not very successful at all. Well, it looks like nothing, but it's actually coming through there. It's just little bits at a time. So we'll keep it at that. There's a lot of fiber in rhubarb, which is probably good for our bellies when we eat it. But it means when you're trying to get what I'm doing here basically is taking the fiber out, separating the fiber from the juices and everything else. It means that you lose a lot of the mass of it, but that's okay. And we're still going to eat the rhubarb compote in this. I'm just trying to get a bit of this out to add directly to the mousse, to give a little bit of rhubarb flavor to the mousse. Alright, so let's see how that's looking. If the strainer was less fine, more would come through. But you can see. It's coming through nicely. And this is all we need. We just want a little bit of that rhubarb flavor. We don't want tons of it in there anyway. So you can see we've got a couple tablespoons of that rhubarb coming through, and I'm just going to fold that into our mousse, and there we go. So this is white chocolate and rhubarb mousse, all right? And now we are going to check on the rhubarb over here. So we see it's just starting to break down, and this is just about where I'd like it to be. I like having some of these chunks, but I don't want them to be hard. So they're getting to this point where they're very tender. And I think that looks great. I'm really happy with that. I'm going to stop. This is what we would cool, and then it would be just like the one we just took out of the refrigerator. We're going to check on the crumble. It smells really good right now. So if I look at this, there's a little bit of browning happening, but I haven't burnt anything. That's part of why we cook this at 325 degrees. And when I grab one of these, like, it doesn't feel as raw to me anymore. It's not going to be hard yet because it's got to cool before it's going to get crunchy, but it's got like this more cooked texture, which I'm really happy with. So this is looking really yummy. I'll turn the oven off, and we'll add this crumble over here. If you're wondering why these crumbles are different colors, it probably reflects the flour we chose. So this one was 100% fresh wheat flour. This one was like half fresh wheat, half white. And so they're going to be slightly different in color. But it looks really yummy. And we're at a point now where we can go ahead and put together our mousse. So we need we need to pick something to serve it in. I think that this cup might work well for us. We used to have really fun. You want to do it in the. You can do it in that, but then you won't be able to see the layers from the outside. You can go ahead and get one of those. We'll make it both ways, okay? So we used to have these cool Sunday cups. I can't remember what we did with them. I think we were just trying to simplify the kitchen and get rid of them. So now we use ramekins. What Blue's talking about is a Sunday cup, which means the Sundays at our house, which I love, and we have them. We have Sundays quite often. But they're really teeny. One little scoop of ice cream, some hot fudge, and they're really yummy, but they're sort of teeny. So I am just cleaning out this this cup because it looked like somebody had grabbed some when they grabbed in there to get a cup, maybe had messy hands. So. All right, so I've got us a cup to make mousse, and then what we're going to do. We're going to start out with some of this crumble, and so we would like to get some of the small pieces and some of the bigger chunks. So look, see how that's looking? And I would go on this recipe, like, I actually love this crunchy texture, and I would be a little bit generous on this. So you see I'm putting in quite a bit of crunch. So that's, maybe you see this sideways. So that's the crunch. All right, next, we're going to come over here. We're going to hit it up with some mousse. So this is the rhubarb white chocolate mousse that we made. And we're going to go ahead and put some of that in there. And whoops. All right, not bad. Okay, and then maybe you want to give me a little paper towel, Violet? I'll clean this up. Give me a little paper towel. All right. So, see, we want this to have a pretty clean rim in the end, so I'll tidy that up. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get some of this rhubarb compote that we made. And the rhubarb has like a really nice tart quality to it. It's a little bit sour. It has some sugar in it, so it's not like too sour, but it's going to be a little bit sour. And now we have crumb on the bottom. We have a rhubarb mousse, then we've got the rhubarb compote. And this is the rhubarb version of the pawpaw mousse that we served at Clover. I don't think we've ever served this at Clover, but we are making a version of this as a dessert for the boxes that we're selling to people that we're doing either by pickup or delivery. And if you haven't checked those out, you can go to Clover's website and read a lot more about them. It's a way we're trying to bring some of our favorite items into people's kitchens and sort of turbocharge your kitchen, make it a little easier for you to make really delicious food. And we might as well dig in, do you think? It's really good. Look, I think you're gonna even have to take a bite of this. And Blue, you got a big bite there. Want to taste a little bit, Vi? Clem, you want to try some? So I don't know where Clem ran off to, but she's missing out. I'll give you a little bite. So we've got a happier cameraman right now. I want to take a couple minutes to talk to people a little bit about some of the things happening at Clover. I've been getting a lot of questions about what's next and what's happening, and I thought maybe I would just share a little bit with everybody about what's going on there. So we are in the process of restarting the business. We suspended all of our operations at the beginning of March when Massachusetts had prohibitions on restaurants, and we're just now starting to fire everything up. My approach to this has been I wanted to go sort of slow and carefully, and the reason for that is in part I would like to make sure our staff are really safe, and I want to make sure that customers are really safe. So part of the thinking then has been to start up our commissary first, which is in one physical location where we can oversee everybody and see what's going on, and to get that going and have that operate for a little while, and then go ahead and open the restaurants after that. So the way we started the commissary out is we started with these boxes, and if you haven't checked them out, like I mentioned, you can look on the website. They're really, really fun. There's some unboxing videos on the channel. Currently, we're taking orders. Like if you're watching this live and you haven't, you can place an order for Saturday pickup or delivery. We deliver within about 30 miles, which brings you out to about $4.95. And Clementine's joined me on some of the delivery routes, not all of them, but we're going to be doing more of those going forward. So you can order these boxes from Clover, get awesome food at home. And that business that we're building has been helping us support what we're doing in the rest of the company. We are working now to open our restaurants, and the initial restaurant operations will be takeout only, and we're only going to be taking orders digitally. So if you're interested, you can join us starting Monday. We're going to have nice long hours like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we're starting out with the restaurant that we call Clover Hub. That's at 1075 Cambridge Street in East Cambridge. That is the same location as our commissary, so it's obvious probably to most people why we would open that one. We're also opening the one at Kendall Square, which is one of our older restaurants, and I'm hopeful we're going to find our customers there. I think everybody's been scattered for a little while, and not everybody's back to work there, but I'm hoping we can find enough folks to make business. We're also going to open our restaurant in Burlington because we think that the suburban restaurants will work a little better and go a little faster. So those are the restaurants we're starting out with. Whole Foods has approached us and offered, which I think is really an awesome offer, to allow us to use the Sudbury and Westford Whole Foods kiosks to do delivery, which isn't something they allowed in the past. So we're going to open those up as well, and that's going to open up delivery in Sudbury and Westford. The other restaurants are not going to be delivery, they're going to be pickup only, but Sudbury and Westford, those regions will be delivery. So I've got to look at how that works out, but it might mean here, we live in Lincoln, it's not too far from Sudbury, we may be able to get delivery to my house, which would be pretty fun, and I'm sure we would take advantage of that a few times. So that's what's going on. We are bringing back employees as we can. Initially, it's just for these restaurants, and then we'll expand more of that later. And so I expect it'll be a little while before we're back at 100% operations, but we're working toward that. So that's just a little update for everybody on what's going on with Clover. Thank you so much for joining us in Air's Kitchen. The kids are gobbling at the rhubarb. I think they want me to stop talking so they can just eat more of the dessert. But we'll be back again. I'll try to get another show in next